Well, let's talk about chapter 8 here real quick as you get into this discussion. It's called the Pastoral Tenure Decreases. It's one of the things that happened in those churches that were dying. And as they died, pastors left a lot quicker. Now, it's interesting that this comes up because there was a time in my ministry, I was the executive director for a ministry called Pastor in Residence. Back in the late 1990s, there were 1,300 pastors every month who were leaving the ministry. They were being fired, forced out, terminated, however you want to say it. And they were great. I talked to thousands of them. They were great pastors. Wrong place, wrong time. That wasn't even to talk about the pastors that were dying, the pastors that were retiring. Add that to the mix, and we're losing a whole lot more pastors every month. Now the numbers are even more staggering. There are about 1,800 pastors every month that are being fired, terminated, forced to resign, however you want to say it. Now put into the mix, we have a dying church, and pastors are going left and right. There's going to come a time, listen to me friends, there's going to come a time, because there's not enough pastors already, that churches are not going to be able to find a pastor like they've known before. Tom Rainier, in the Autopsy of a Deceased Church, says this, second paragraph, the problem is that many good leaders are leaving churches before they reach their prime leadership years at the church. I don't know, I've heard different reports. Some say 3 to 5 years, some say 5 to 7 years. Whatever those years are, when they reach their prime leadership. And I'm thinking, sometimes we just don't have that much time. We're going to have to make a move. We're going to have to do something. Down at the bottom of that first paragraph, first page, chapter 8, he says, the church would call a new pastor with the hope that the pastor could lead the church back to health. The pastor comes to the church and leads a few changes. The members don't like the changes and resist. The pastor leaves. He's discouraged. The cycle repeats itself over and over and over again. This is a continuing process. This is a hard process. He goes, a few chapters later, he goes through this. Year 1 is the honeymoon, hoping and believing the best of each other. They go through the honeymoon. Perhaps the church was happy to replace their former pastor. That season does not last very long, the honeymoon period. Years 2 and 3, conflicts and challenges. Years 4 and 5, the crossroads, part 1. In years 4 and 5 are the most common years when a pastor leaves, because he knows deep down inside nothing's going to change. Nobody's going to change. They're not going to allow change. And here again, that comes to a trust factor. Now, I want to be real honest with you, as I was honest with the staff as we were going through this. There's a lot of issues here at Lutheran Church of the Master, and it comes down to a trust issue. I know the problems that have happened. I'm well aware of them. And understand this, I was forced to resign. So if you were part of that and you knew what it was like to be hurt by a pastor, also understand this, I've been in that other where I knew what it was like to be hurt by church people. So somewhere along the line, trust gets broken. And when trust gets broken, it's hard to replace that. Totally understand that. But I want you to know, I've worked through that, and I continue to work through that, because it's about the kingdom of God. It's about His bride, the church. And somewhere along the line, trust has to come into play. When trust comes into play, pastor's tenure will go up. He says years 6 to 10, those are the fruit and harvest years. The church is likely to experience some of its best years by almost any metrics during this period of the pastor's tenure. And years 11 and beyond is the crossroads part 2. One path, he says, is to be reinvigorated as a leader and ready to tackle new challenges and cast new visions, or the pastor will be resistant to change and then become complacent, and that will lead to death eventually when they stay too long. Interesting chapter, I think. Maybe it's just because I'm a pastor, but I'd like you to talk about it with each other. He says the cycle repeated itself until finally the church shut its doors. And on the last page of that chapter, he says this, there was no attempt to lead toward change. There was no attempt to have any outward focus. There was no attempt to become more like the community in which the church was located. They became caretakers of members only. Well, I pray that as you talk about this, we get greater insight and we work this out. I've made this known at the beginning at our initiation of this. The book offers no solutions. You and I, we're the solution to a dying church. God bless your discussion.